Welcome back to Media Makers Hub. My name is Erica, and today we're going to talk more about JVC cameras. So today, the one that we're going to talk about is the JVC-GY HM600U. So this is a professional videography camera. It combines some of those really nice features with portability. So with that being said, we're going to hop right in and take a look at the camera. It's this guy. Just from first glance, you can already tell that it is a little bit smaller than the other JVC we have looked at, but it functions very similar and so shows very, very similar camera quality. So this is mainly used for news. You can use it for news, sports events, people that film documentaries, all that fun stuff. And it's a slightly simpler, smaller version of the other one that we have talked about. So we're going to dive right in and take a closer look at some of the features and all these wonderful buttons. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what all these buttons do and all that fun stuff, we're just going to take a really quick tour of the outside of our camera. We've got one side which has not many buttons, not a lot of buttons, a couple buttons, but not as many as the other side. We have things like a handle to hold, audio inputs, zoom controls. On our back side here is where a bunch of those ports are, and then the side with all of our buttons, all the controls, all that fun stuff, LCD screen, and then we've got our lens all the way up here at the front. So we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at some of these buttons and functions in just a second here. So to start our tour around the camera, we're going to start all the way in the back here. So this is where your SD card or memory card is going to go in. This is where the battery goes in, and this is where most of the external ports are. So this door over here, if I flick this open, that is where your memory cards are going to go. It has two slots, so you can essentially have two cards running at the same time, and if one fills up, it can switch to the second one. And then much like most of the cameras that we've been interacting with, how these guys work is you take your memory card, slide it in until it clicks, and then now it's in there and good to go. And then take it out, you do the reverse, give it a click, pop it out, and there we go. So on our other side is where the rest of those ports are. At the bottom here is what they call the DC port. It is where the external battery goes in. It's basically a computer cord that plugs into the camera, and you can run it off that and not battery power. And then we have the remote one. So this one is where you could plug in a zoom control or some other control so that you don't have to zoom with the keys on the camera. And then this bigger door up here at the top has a device port, has an AV port, and has an HDMI port. HDMI usually is used for if you plug in an external monitor or something like that. And then AV is kind of where you would monitor audio. And then the last one we've got on this side is the SDI port. So you'd plug an SDI cable into there. And then right up tippy top here, there are two more ports. It's an aux port and then another sort of headphone jack port. So now we're moving to this side of our camera. So this side is where you would use one of your hands to slide through this little sleeve here, and it can help you carry and balance this camera if you aren't using a tripod. Up on the tippy top here, this little lever is a zoom control, so that when your hand is in this little side, you can just use that to control the zoom. And then quick little turn, we've got one of the record buttons that you can press down here, and then there's another button right up here that you can program to do different things. Up near the top part of this camera, we are going to have our XLR ports and then a microphone holder. So right now it has a microphone plugged into one of the inputs, and this sort of clip up here unscrews with a little nut on the side, and then you can slide a microphone in there, or you can plug in an external microphone, all that fun stuff. So now you're looking at the front of the camera. Nothing too crazy here. The big thing to keep an eye on is this is where your lens is, this big thing right here. Much like most of the other ones we've been working with, they do have a cover to them just to make sure those lenses don't get damaged and whatnot. And then this big piece here is where your LCD screen pops out, and then you'll see that the microphone kind of is in line with all of that as well. All right, so I've tilted this on its side just so that we can take a look at the top part up here. So this little kind of clear piece right here, that is a light that when you hit the record button, it's going to turn red and show you that you're recording. This sort of metallic piece right here, this is a mount, so you can use certain wireless mics attached that way, some monitors attached that way. Basically, it's a little square mounting piece that goes right in here and then tightens down. This was the screw that I was talking about earlier for how to get this mic in and out. We have another zoom button right here next to our record button. And just like our other JVC, this one also has a hold setting where you can't press our recording button, which is really good if you are physically carrying it so that you don't accidentally bump something. If it's just on a tripod and you accidentally have it on hold, that can be real annoying. Before we get up close and personal with some of these settings, this is the busiest side of the camera. This is where all of the controls are. This is where it's the easiest to access your lens sliders, as I call them sometimes. So stuff like zoom and things like that. This is also the side where that LCD screen pops out, and these are all of our audio controls, and then you've got on, off, and all those fun buttons, which we'll take a closer look at here in just a second. So now that we've taken a little bit of a tour, you know how to put an SD card in, you've seen all the sides of the cameras except for the bottom, but we'll talk about that later. We're gonna now show you how to put a battery in. So this big slot right here is your battery slot. So they look very similar to the other ones. They are just a little bit smaller, and they have that same mechanism with those little gray teeth. There's teeth inside of there. So you're going to go ahead and put the teeth there at the bottom, on the top, and then slide it in until it clicks. And you'll hear it click. And then to get it out, use the battery release, and using this sort of little indent here, you can use your hand to lift the battery out. And then, since this time I actually have the cord to show you, we're going to talk about if you want to use the cord to run it or if you want to use a battery. So batteries are great, especially if you aren't close to an outlet or anything that you could plug the camera in. Sometimes it's easier to plug a camera in if you know you're going to be filming for a while. So it's a little bit tangled, but this is that cord. As you can see, I've said before, it really does kind of look like a computer cord battery. So obviously you'd plug this end in to the wall, outlet, whatever you want to do, and then you would pop open that bottom little flap that we talked about, and it's got just one of these ends, and you'd slide that right in, plug it into wall, and now you don't have to worry about a battery dying, and you have unlimited power for as long as you're plugged into a wall. So there isn't a whole lot going on with the bottom side of your camera. The biggest thing I wanted to show here is the tripod-like plate attachment thing here. So there's a couple different screws on there, and that's where you attach a tripod plate. I have one with me right now. So for the tripods that we use, or a lot of them, some of those plates will look like this. They've got either 1 to 2 screws on there, and then sort of mechanisms so that it latches into the tripod. So much like on here, one of those screws is bigger than the other. So all you would do is line those up to their corresponding sides on the plate up here. And then you would just screw those in. And then you have a tripod plate on there to put the camera on the tripod. I'm gonna leave this off for now. But yeah, that's pretty much all that's sort of on this underside, except for some like identifying information about the camera itself. Okay, we're gonna talk about all the buttons. We've got lots of buttons. So we have up on this top row right here, we have a focus assist, OIS, and then LOLUX. These all just change sort of how our LCD screen shows things and video kind of quality. We've got our focus over here that you've got auto or manual. You have a push auto button, and then these are ND filters you can apply. This is that dial that you control everything from. Menu button, up, down, side to side, all that good stuff. Play or pause button for playbacks, and then a cancel button. And then towards the bottom here, we have got more things. So AE lock, zebra, which we've talked about zebra before. It kind of adds these like stripes to your LCD screen, so then you can sort of see some of the darker areas. And then we have marker over here. Down here is where you're going to look at white balance. So there's certain presets, there's certain like levels already, and then there's that flower button again that we've talked about on the other JVC, and then the option to put it in full auto or manual when working with the white balance. And then we've got important stuff, which is our power button and then a mode button. This power button is exactly like all the other ones. It's got that little blue little notch inside that you have to push down to push the button up. So we have moved to the upper portion of the camera. So this is what's hidden behind the LCD screen. This is a lot of just basic the audio components. So we have stuff that controls channel 1 versus channel 2 and input versus input 2. The channels is what appears on the LCD screen, and the input is the physical input on the other side. And then you can choose what comes up on the monitor with these. Display and status come along with, like, status will bring up everything that's happening with your camera, and like display will bring up different things on there, and then peaking in LCD brightness. And then these little dials down here can control like the volume of the audio that you're picking up. And one of those things that sets this camera apart from the other JVC is, while it isn't touchscreen, much like the other one, you do have your own kind of little joystick almost to go through the menu with a menu button up here, and then the cancel button. So you can use the LCD screen to control the options in the menu rather than the piece down on the side of the camera if you would like to do that, which is different from the other one. The other one you can't do that. So we've looked at all the buttons. We're going to take a look at the menu. Menu looks identical to every other JVC that I've talked about or I've used. You've got your camera function, camera process, TC/UV, LCD/VF, AV set, system. And for this one, that's all that it has. This one doesn't really have any live streaming capabilities on the camera itself. You can hook it up to live streams, but it won't run it itself like the other one does. And all of these have those same kind of options as the other camera. Just like with the other camera though, when you insert an SD card or anything like that, you are going to want to go to media and format your media, just so that you have optimal space on your card. Right next to our ND filters are going to be all of your dials that you can adjust, so things like zoom, the brightness of your shots, all that good stuff. This one's actually got a little sort of handle on the one dial here, which makes it really easy to adjust, but that's all up near that lens, just like on all of our other cameras. So we've talked about a lot of the features on this camera. We've talked about a bunch of stuff. So one thing I'm going to show you that I really haven't talked about before, you've only just kind of seen it in action, is putting a camera on a tripod. We're going to talk about tripods and all the accessories for cameras later video, but I just kind of wanted to introduce you to that and show that to you. So the plates and the tripods that we use kind of look like this. They are just normal 3-legged tripods with arms and stuff on them. So the thing to look at is this. So this is the top of that tripod. This is where that plate goes in. You've got a lock on this side over here to lock it in so it doesn't move back and forth. And then this little red pin helps initially lock that tripod into place. So I'm going to quickly throw this guy up and just slide the camera into the tripod for you. Okay, so I talked about tripod plates earlier. So I have this one screwed in, all ready to go on to this camera. So they all go in specific directions. On this one, I have to slide it all the way past this little red tab. So you start at this point back here and slide it through. So, and your lens is that front piece. The lens goes in first. Lens side goes in first. So we'll line it up to that groove, push that red button in, slide this guy in. So now that is slightly in there. Do you see how this won't go back any further, but it still moves on that plate? That's where that little knob on the other side comes into play. You'll just give that a quick turn, and now this ain't going anywhere on that tripod. So this is one of those ways that you can get really smooth shots and really stable shots by just using a tripod. And with that, that concludes our real quick tour of this JVC, more specifically the JVC-GY HM600U. Very similar to our other JVC, we've talked about a lot of similar buttons, similar features, all that good stuff. A really nice, easy camera to start out working with. So if you have any other questions or want to know anything else, please leave them down below. We'll do our best to answer them. And here comes my favorite phrase. If you need some more assistance, Google it. Google's your best friend. So this has been Media Makers Hub, and we will all see you in the next video. Bye.